Good morning, everybody. This is our first regular meeting since declaring a state of emergency on March 31st, 2025, due to the ice storm that caused widespread power and communication outages here in Minden Hills. So this is our regular council meeting for Thursday, April the 24th, 2025. Today's agenda has several reports as well as a closed session meeting that will take place near the end of our meeting. Madam Clerk, please proceed with a roll call to confirm council attendance.
Counselor Sisson,
Present.
Counselor Saini,
Present.
Counselor McKelvey,
Present.
Counselor Johannesson,
Present.
Counselor Ingram will be joining virtually later today. Deputy Mayor Shell,
Present.
Mayor Carter.
Present. We respectfully acknowledge that the Township of Minden Hills is located on Treaty 20 Michisagi territory and in the traditional territory of the Michisagi and Chippewa nations, collectively known as the Williams Treaties First Nations, which are Curve Lake, Rama, Hiawatha, Alderville, Scugog Island, Beausoleil, and Georgina Island First Nations. We acknowledge the shared presence of Indigenous nations throughout the area and recognize its original Indigenous inhabitants as the stewards of its lands and waters since time immemorial. I call this meeting to order at 9:01 a.m. Madam Clerk, please proceed with reading the resolution for the approval of the agenda.
Moved by Counselor Johannesson, seconded by Counselor Saini. Be it resolved that the April 24th, 2025 regular council meeting agenda be approved as circulated.
All those in favor? That is carried. Are there any declarations of pecuniary interest? Seeing none, we have no public meetings or delegations. So we go to the adoption of the minutes for the March 13th and March 27th regular council meeting minutes. Members of council, are there any comments or amendments? Seeing none, Madam Clerk, please read the resolution.
Moved by Counselor McKelvey, seconded by Deputy Mayor Shell. Be it resolved that council approves the March 13th and 27th regular council meeting minutes.
All those in favor? That is carried. The mayor's reports. Well, it's been an interesting few weeks. We are on day 25 of our state of emergency. Why a state of emergency? I think we have noted it in a number of our notices and press releases and et cetera, but municipalities and upper tiers can declare a state of emergency, which enables us to have access to certain, in this case, provincial government services and equipment, et cetera. So, you know, in the case of our emergency, we were able to avail ourselves of services, particularly, let's say, just on EMS. You know, we had EMS services from the county of Renfrew, the York region, Frontenac and Lanark counties, all were made available to us at a time of need, and that goes on to many other types of services. The other reason is that there are more along the legal side of things, but it enables us to apply for funding after the emergency is over. So if we had any extraordinary expenses, et cetera, that were related to the if you will, disaster or emergency, we have the ability to claim from the provincial government some monies. The next one is that it enables our constituents in certain circumstances to appeal for funding if their insurance companies do not pay for certain types of damages, et cetera. So there's a number of programs that are made available to us and the community. So that's why you would declare the state of emergency. It also changes a number of other rules and et cetera. But the The question then is, I think yesterday, Peterborough got out of their state of emergency, and we have remained in. And the reason is that um, the potential for flooding. This has been an unusual spring in many ways. Water levels are extremely high, some due to the melt that we've had and other due to the amount of rain we've had. The Prior to the ice storm, we had already been meeting for at least a month with MNR and Parks Canada to work on, the the potential for flooding and how we move water and so on and so forth. So our situation right now is that on the Burnt River, things are actually pretty decent. They've peaked, or and now the waters are a little bit lower. When you get rain, the waters will go up and down, but generally we're not too concerned about that. Our issue is with the Gull River, and of course, the Gull River goes right through downtown Minden, and the lakes above Minden are, for all intents and purposes, full. So, there's a certain amount of water that can flow down through the Gull River. And it really comes down to, how much rain you're getting. So the unfortunately, we found out that, no matter who we try to influence, we can't change Mother Nature. And the amount of water that we get is rain that we get, particularly above Minden, could put us into a flooding situation. Now, our issue right now is because of the ice storm, there are so many branches and trees and so on that that are out there that the it's very easy for our culverts to become filled. And if our culverts become filled, then water goes over the top of the road. The roads are already saturated, so it takes virtually no time at all for the road to potentially wash out. And we've had washouts and partial washouts all over the place. So our roads crews are very busy looking at every culvert. And, when you, I don't know if we've ever done a count, but there's a lot more culverts out there than one expects and one even notices. But at this time of year, we notice. So that's why we are in and remain in a state of emergency. We probably will until sometime next week. But our situation is that I believe that the estimate from Parks Canada is we're 2 to 3 weeks out before we get down to normal water levels. I believe yesterday's report said that the amount of water going down the Gull is twice as high as it normally would be at this time of year. Because at this time of year, we're normally putting boards in the logs in the dam to hold water back into the lake so that we have enough water in the reservoirs for our enjoyment, and also to have the water in there. We're not at that stage right now. Most of the dams are wide open, trying to get as much water down as possible. The message is the water is moving very fast. The banks of virtually everything is very soft. So we've made the pleas through the fire department, through the police, through everybody, that we that stay away from those waters. They're not your friend right now, and they things can change pretty rapidly. So extreme caution is required. Uh, I also wanted to add that, ice storms and things like that don't treat everybody equally. You have, some people have properties where virtually, there was virtually no damage. Other people have had properties where they've been decimated, including their homes. So, we are trying to balance our approach. We have been working with the county, and we get to a stage of doing the cleanup afterwards. Rule number one was to open up the roads, but you'll see in many locations, even though the roads have been open, you'll still see trees that are out onto the shoulders of those roads. They all have to be cleaned up. And then we recognize that through some of our actions, we've allowed people to bring brush to Scotch Line, but we are working on a program to help people with the situations that they have on their personal properties. It's a big issue, and some people would like it to start right away, but we're still dealing with the brush on the roadways. So I think in the next week or so, there will be a joint announcement from Minden Hills and the county as to how exactly we're going to do all that. There's an awful lot of wood that has to be moved right now, and it's not going to happen overnight. So some gardens may be delayed into when they're planted. Some people are in much more desperate situations than that. We have about 200 or so uh, properties that are without power still. These are work with hydro, calls them suspended calls. They may be cottages that are out on an island that they haven't been able to access, or other things. We believe that all of them are really seasonal residents, although there may be some that are not. Um, but people are working directly with hydro on that. And the last thing I want to note is uh, thank you to the people of Minden Hills. I know a lot of people have worked and volunteered and helped their neighbors, and the community has come together. We also owe a debt of gratitude to lots of people. So in the next week or so, we'll start to put together the thank you notes that we have to send to all the people who have done extraordinary work to get us through all this. So thank you to the community, thank you to staff, and to lots of other organizations that have got us to this point. So with that, there is bright news on the future. The endless April showers will hopefully bring us the May flowers, but I can predict right now it'll be a good year for mosquitoes. But we will press on. Councillor Saini, Roma.
Okay, thank you. Through the mayor, of course, we have a newly elected government now, so Roma is welcoming the new members of the parliament and building those relationships. At our last meeting here in April, we had a meeting with some training from Strategy Corps with Sabina Matthews, and she gave an excellent presentation on how to present effectively to government powers. So keep talking. Thank you. I am hoping that we can use that not only with Roma, but also in some of the deputations that we might take from our council here as well. There are quite a few things to cover, but I want to first, if I may, hand out these pins at the clerk's permission, which puts, excuse me. And as these pins, you can see, excuse my throat. As the Canada First, the elbows aren't up on the flags, but the flags are there. So something to keep in mind these days. So Roma is also supporting with AMO some of the advocacy related to the US tariff. So this is a big concern, and particularly how it might affect our businesses and rural communities. So we are keeping that on the agenda and with the work of our lobbying work. In terms of infrastructure, the province is launching 175 million health and safety water stream application system with intake on the 17th. And so once again, this is not for new water systems. This is for existing, recognizing the cost of this kind of infrastructure, particularly for our rural communities. So we're going to be pushing that. So be tuned and get ready to, I'm looking at our treasurer, make applications. She's nodding her head. Yes, thank you. There's also a newly funded direction responding to Roma's advocacy to increase small and rural communities' access to infrastructure funding along with that water stream project. Rural communities also continue to call for infrastructure funding that will support new housing. And so this is going to be a huge focus as well, as we all know and have seen this issue continue from the previous government to now. And in terms of fiscal sustainability, this continues to be how are we as municipalities getting funded? It's the old 100-year-old model that's not working with today's infrastructure and all the additional downloads that we've received. So one of the things that is in the process now is Roma and AMO are doing the survey. And so our treasurer and other treasurers will be getting a survey soon. We want to particularly encourage our rural participation in that in terms of our funding, excuse me, in terms of our funding for the how we finance things such as healthcare and how much money are we spending on healthcare, which was a kind of a download to our rural budgets. So that's going to be an important survey for us to complete and encourage other rural communities to complete. In terms of healthcare and homelessness, we welcome the work of Jane Philpott to expand the primary care across Ontario, and there is a call for proposals now for many rural areas. So keeping track of that. And the other thing I should mention is the code of conduct, which we continue to work on, which is a code of conduct for the people who have been elected to official office. And we're asking, and there was a couple of years ago, 100% stand up requesting this at an AMO conference. Our mayor was there. I'm sure you remember that when the whole crowd, thousands of people stood up and said, we need reform in this area. We still haven't seen what we're looking for. And so this work is continuing. And of course, the last thing to bring across is the strong mayor's powers that has just been expanded to another 169 municipalities. I'm sure we'll have more discussion at this, and I'm sure our mayor will bring this up at another meeting for discussion. But this is another thing that we need to be looking at. I want to say that Roma and AMO have had no voice in this, was not consulted on this. We have no opinions. We did have some informal discussions from different municipalities. Some very valuable discussions and some things that were sent to me from particularly Tilbury, a municipality that has some interesting approach to it. We can also see one of our neighboring communities here to the east running into some problems already. I won't name them at this point because they're problems, not solutions. And so this is something that is going to affect us. On a personal note, this bothers me, because it's a model out of the US. And that's where the roots are to some of this type of decision making. How it applies here may be different, but I think we got to pay really close attention to this in terms of our own democracy. So we got to be educated on this particular area. So that's about all I have. So please wear your flags proudly, and thank you for this time to present the Roma report. Thank you, Mayor.
Thank you. Moving on. All right, Councilor McKelvey.
Just a couple of things there. The funding program looks, and I know you referenced somebody behind me, which is the treasurer saying, nodding your head, but are we going to get a report back here on this, or?
It hasn't come forward yet.
No, I realize it hasn't come forward, but the funding has come out. I just want to make sure we do something here as far as.
Sorry, what funding has come out?
The funding has come out for the health and safety water stream is what they call it.
Correct.
It's 73% funding for water system upgrades and that sort of thing. I don't want to lose that opportunity, but I think it's something we need to have back here, or what are we doing?
Yeah, my last, dealing with that was with the Minister of Infrastructure, and I don't know, I don't know the details of this program. Madam Treasurer, are you?
Through you, Mr. Mayor, I know that our Director of Public Works and our Treasurer have signed up for a webinar related to some of the water and wastewater programs, and we certainly can keep council up to date on, we're of the same mind. We do not want to lose an opportunity for funding for our existing water systems, so.
Okay, so we can note that after that webinar, we can have an update as to what's happened. Did you say you had another question? Yeah.
Yes. So the other one is the mention by Councillor Sini of the strong mayor's powers. And, we probably read on social media that this is going to be an impact here. Are we going to get a report on this? Is this something that's going to come back? There's municipalities that are, fighting this whole thing. And is that something that's going to get discussed at this table, or are you just going to?
At this point, we have not really even looked into what the implications are. I would think that we probably sometime in late May or so, we could have a discussion on that as to, what it may mean for us. I don't see that there's any, unlike certain locations, I don't see that we have any immediate changes. There's certainly not going to be any immediate changes in staff or so on that has happened in some other jurisdictions. So I think once we get through this emergency and we have some time to be able to look at it, we can have some ideas as to how that might affect the municipality. The number one thing would be to try to, particularly in the area of planning, of being able to move faster, to be able to change things that we can hopefully expedite the process and perhaps change some of the, I want to call them ancient rules that we have to make it be a little bit easier to build housing. Councillor Saini?
Yes, thank you, through the mayor. In response to that too, and having that discussion, I realize that we're in a state of emergency, so I do have more information, more discussions and things that we can talk at a later date. But I think I didn't want to put this onto the mayor or the deputy mayor who've been involved in all these hours of emergency consultations, and we're not as business as usual. So I look forward to that further discussion about the Strong Mayors Act and what other municipalities are doing. But just recognizing that the timing for us right now to address this fully is not now, not until we get through some of this emergency and recover a little bit and I can retire my chainsaw pants. So thank you.
Well, don't retire them yet. We're one windstorm away from a lot of those loose branches to start coming down again. Okay, so let us move on. I think we got into department reports. Mr. Timmons. Lisa.
Thank you, Mayor Carter. Good morning, council. Before you have report 2505 for the roads excavator and float trailer purchase. So what we did here was we reached out to 4 major manufacturers, including Caterpillar, John Deere, Bobcat, and Hyundai. We we set our specs in a way to try to get an apples to apples type evaluation. And with a little back and forth with these various providers, we were able to get a list of specs and equipment best we could do to sort of match up. So we're comparing, like I said, an apples to apples situation. And we did both this for the excavator as well as the float trailer, which is also included in this report. So starting with the excavator, we're in the range of a 15-ton excavator. So you'll notice operating weight is relatively close on each one of them. Key factors here, obviously the equipment itself, availability of service, warranties, safety features, and the availability of the piece of equipment itself in terms of lead time on getting it and getting it to work. So looking at Caterpillar, 315 excavator out of Tormont Cat in Aurelia. This one's available for pickup as soon as possible. It's on the lot, ready to go. 12-month warranty with an 84-month extended warranty that's included in the package. Superior safety features in this case, all oil and circle check features are at ground level. A lot of excavators, especially in the older style, you have to get up in the back of the machine. You know, not a huge risk, but if it's one we can eliminate in the winter, it's icy, rainy, whatever, a day like this, in the dark, it's nice to be able to keep your feet on the ground. Major distributor, 31 service locations in Ontario, and lots of technicians available if required for any maintenance, especially in that warranty period. John Deere 135 from Brant Tractor in Barrie. The delivery is 30 to 60 days from the order date. 12-month standard warranty and additional warranty when we get to the excavator price on the financial implications. I've sort of worked the warranties in to try to match it up so that we're looking at a similar product. Next one was a Hyundai. Their delivery dates about 120 days, 36 months standard warranty or 3,000 hours. And this is out of Lindsay, Bob Mark Equipment out of Lindsay. Fourth one we spoke to with Bobcat. That's a 145 excavator from Bobcat of Peterborough. Again, similar operating weight. I couldn't get a delivery date out of them, so that leaves a bit of a question mark on this one. 24-month to 24-month or 2,000-hour warranty. 15 locations in Ontario, so pretty good with their service as well. So we went through all these options. When I flip over, if we go to the next page, I'll come back around to the trailer aspect. We broke down the price. So as you can see, the equipment base price, the standard warranty that comes in that base price, and then what it would cost to get the extended warranty to kind of put together a total price. With the full evaluation, in this case, the recommendation would be to go with the Cat 135 from Tormont Cat in Aurelia. Superior quality equipment, superior safety features, superior extended warranty. It's not the cheapest, but it's also not the most expensive. And it would certainly serve our purposes. And another big aspect for this is that it's available. We can pick it up and we can get to work. So that is a big feature for us as well. So that's the first part of this report. Second part being the float trailer. What we have here is two very similar options, two very similar trailers from one from Miska Trailers out of Hamilton and one out of BWS from Keene, Ontario. Both very similar payload, very similar size in terms of length and width. Warranty on these aren't as critical, but still important. So lifetime warranty and workmanship and materials out of Miska Trailers. And BWS is a 12-month bumper to bumper and then 5-year superstructure warranty. So depending when you get into the, devil's in the details there, but lifetime warranty and workmanship and materials is pretty good. So in our case, for the trailer, we are recommending the lower of the two prices at 48,000, almost 49,000. And that concludes the general details of this report. Happy to take some questions. Just to recap the recommendation, it will be to purchase the CAT 315 from Tormont Cat and the trailer from Miska Trailer Factory in Hamilton.
So I would assume that any purchase that would go out into the future could also be susceptible to tariffs and so on, if the equipment isn't here in the country already.
Yeah, through to Mayor Carter, I would expect absolutely we will see that. And at this time, these prices have all agreed to hold this price, even if there is some import fees. But I would think anything going forward or anything that's not on the lot currently would be would have that added for sure.
Any other questions? Councilor McKelvey?
I agree with what you're proposing. The only question I had was, did we check through the LAS program to see if we could have gotten anything through them cheaper?
We did, and we did work with the treasurer on that, and we still found ourselves in the best position here.
That's fine. Thank you.
Any other questions? Please read the resolution.
Moved by Deputy Mayor Shell, seconded by Counselor Sisson, that council receive report 2505, roads excavator and float trailer purchases information, and that council directs staff to award the purchase of a new CAT 315 GC excavator from Tormont Cat for $326,189.13 plus HST, and further that council directs staff to purchase a 30-ton HD float trailer from Miska Trailer Factory for $48,930 plus HST.
All those in favor? That is carried. Thank you, Ms. Kosh. Whenever you're ready.
Thank you. Good morning, Council. Through the chair, the purpose of this report is to seek council approval to award RFP ENV 25-001, Contract Administration and Site Inspection Services for the Scotch Line Transfer Station Project to WSP Canada, Inc. The township issued RFP ENV 25-001 on February 14th, 2025, with the RFP closing on March 21st, 2025. The evaluation committee reviewed the submissions for compliance and conducted an evaluation in accordance with the criteria outlined in the bid document. The rated criteria that was evaluated included experience, references, and contingencies, as well as proposed schedule, proposal format, content, and price. Upon completion of the evaluation process, WSP Canada, Inc. received the highest score, achieving a total of 81.5 points. Based on the evaluation results, WSP Canada, Inc. received the highest overall score and submitted a proposal that falls within the approved budget. Accordingly, the evaluation committee recommends awarding RFP ENV 25-001 to WSP Canada, Inc. It is staff's recommendation to award this RFP for contract administration and site inspection services for the Scotch Line Transfer Station Project to WSP Canada in the amount of $226,748 plus HST. And I'm happy to answer any questions that council may have.
Are there any questions? Councillor Saini?
Yes, just to working with these companies that come in to do this work for us, what kind of repercussions can there be if they're not following through with the work that was set out? And I say this just because there have been some companies in the past that have come in and haven't really carried out the contract work. So I'm concerned to make sure that this happens as you would expect it to happen. Thank you.
So through the chair, there are provisions in the RFP document that do speak to errors and not completing the work. With this, we will have staff that are on site monitoring and have regular meetings to keep apprised of any issues that may arise. And then we can handle those with the Director of Finance in accordance with any provisions within the RFP.
Any other questions? Please read the resolution.
Moved by Counselor Sani, seconded by Counselor Johansson, that council receive report 2502 Waste Management RFP award for contract administration and site inspection services for the Scotch Line Transfer Station project, and that council directs staff to award RFP ENV 25001 for contract administration and site inspection services for the Scotch Line for the Scotch Line Transfer Station project to WSP Canada Inc. in the amount of $226,748 plus HST.
All those in favor? That is carried. Thank you. Moving on, you have another report.
Thank you, Mayor Carter, and through you. The purpose of this report is to provide a follow-up with regards to Blue Box services to non-eligible sources. Staff are also bringing forward a recommendation for the management of non-eligible sources starting January 1st, 2026. At the regular council meeting held on November 28th, 2024, council passed the following resolution: that council received report 24-015 Blue Box program changes to non-eligible sources as information. Following comments from council at this meeting, staff contacted Waste Connections as to whether they would accept non-eligible Blue Box materials starting January 1st, 2026 at the material recycling facility located in Bracebridge. Staff also requested processing costs at this time. At the time of reaching out to Waste Connections in December of 2024, non-eligible Blue Box material processing costs only, this does not include hauling, were $150 per metric ton for containers and $50 per metric ton for fibers. As there are still many unknown variables, a list of assumptions have been included in the report for council's information. In an effort to capture additional costing details for council's consideration, the township participated in a joint RFP with Dysart. The municipality of Dysart et al. Issued a joint RFP for collection, hauling, and processing of non-eligible sources of Blue Box materials on behalf of both townships. The lowest compliant bid was from Waste Connections of Canada. Waste Connections currently is providing our Blue Box services for our eligible sources, and they were contracted through Circular Materials. In today's report, staff have provided a brief overview of what the other townships in the county are doing with their non-eligible Blue Box materials. Staff are recommending continuing to provide Blue Box services to non-eligible sources and implement a reasonable waste disposal fee. The waste disposal fee will be partial cost recovery and will help ensure that costs to manage non-eligible source Blue Box material does not solely fall on the property tax base. Furthermore, it is staff's recommendation to outsource the hauling of the non-eligible Blue Box material as opposed to performing this service in-house and award this work to Waste Connections at their bid price. And I'm happy to answer any questions that council may have.
Okay, so nobody said this whole new Blue Box program would be simple and easy to understand. So maybe just for everybody's benefit, if you could just talk about what are non-eligibles as compared to eligibles.
Yes, no problem. So through the chair. So eligible Blue Box material is essentially your residential Blue Box material that comes from your home. And then your non-eligible Blue Box material is material that comes from commercials, institutions, those types of organizations. So come January 1st, 2026, they will have to find alternate arrangements for their Blue Box material. Right now, we're in the transition phase. So Minden Hills transitioned on October 1st, where we can continue to commingle eligible and non-eligible Blue Box material. But come January 1st, 2026, that's when we fully transition to the new Blue Box program. And we will no longer be able to mix in non-eligible Blue Box material with our eligible Blue Box material. So the options are to continue to accept it, but have it separated from your eligible Blue Box material or not accept it at all. And if that were the case, then these individuals or these organizations, institutions would have to find private facilities to take their material to.
So in other words, if I dispose of my plastic bottle at home, it's eligible, but if I put it in the waste basket here at the council chambers, it is not eligible.
Through the chair, that is correct.
Okay. Councillor Singh?
Just to say that we were all excited when this Blue Box program came out, and the explanation that was given to previously at council with the water bottle, if you take it to work or leave it at home, is something that every municipality is dealing with right now. So I see this as a provincial issue. It's an unexpected sort of management system that we have, added expenses to us again. And I think this is a good reason also to continue putting this on the provincial agenda and saying your system is costing us more. The Blue Box program is not what we anticipated and how it was explained originally at many of our committee meetings and conferences years ago. So thanks for doing this work and finding a way out. And other municipalities are doing the same thing and trying to find a way to deal with this. So thanks for your work on this.
Thank you.
Councilor McKelvey?
So, I totally agree with Councillor Saney that we all need to lobby the province to look at this again. It's just a ridiculous legislation, but it's what we have right now to deal with. I personally don't want to start charging commercial businesses for this material. They pay a higher tax rate. But so there's that part of it. The other thing I'm concerned about is the tender process, because Dysart put out the joint tender. They required bonding. So nobody local was even able to apply for this. That's a bit of a concern to me. I'd like to try and at least have the opportunity provided to a local hauler, but I think we need to provide the service. I'm fine with that. We need to realize that if we provide it only at Scotch Line, there's going to be people running businesses in the outer communities that aren't going to be happy with that either. The other thing with the rental of bins, now that the other part of the Blue Box program has gone through for residential, they're providing new bins, I believe. So will we not have extra bins that we can avoid the rental part of this?
So through the chair, the bin rentals was because that is what Dysart requires. So I did outline in my report that we will not, like the price does not include bin rentals because we do own some bins. So you are correct, and Waste Connections now provides bins for the Blue Box recycling. But we do continue to use our own bins for garbage, potentially scrap metal when needed, although our contractor at this time has provided some bins for scrap metal.
I think this is particularly difficult for rural communities that have small businesses. You know, it would be very easy if I'm sitting in a large city to have some private contractor come and say, go door to door and say, hey, I'll do all of your work on this block. Whereas here we've got so many small businesses that are going to have this material, and trying to support them and meet all the legislation is quite the challenge.
So if I may, through you, Mayor, to Councillor McKelvey's question about accepting the ineligible materials at Scotch Line only, that recommendation from staff came because the transfer stations do not have the capacity to have additional bins on those sites. I'm not sure we would have enough bins to put at all of the sites to accept that material. So the recommendation to only accept that material at Scotch Line is similar to our other programs that we offer at Scotch Line only as well, such as construction, demolition, and shingles, as that site can accommodate those materials.
So in the meetings, and I'm sure there have been numerous meetings of various groups across the province and so on, what's the feeling that, you know, the legislation as it stands is going to be a permanent you know, piece of legislation, or is there still an awful lot of, you know, is it a dynamic situation where we may get a number of changes in this even without lobbying the government? I mean, I'm sure that there's people across the province and municipalities who have difficulty with this.
So through the chair, the 4 lower tier townships did provide a letter and send it to the ministry earlier last year in an effort to express our concerns, speak on behalf of small rural municipalities and our challenges that we face. One of the biggest ones is that any private facilities are quite a distance from us here. We don't have any locally that can accept non-eligible materials. So we really lobbied on behalf in that regard. We did get a response, and it was essentially that our concerns are noted. We do have meetings with Circular Materials every month, and it's a question that is brought up every time, but they have indicated that there are no plans to change this at this time. Should council approve to award this RFT to Waste Connections, we would enter into an agreement with them, but there would be language in there that should the province change the regulations, that we can cancel that agreement and then start commingling the materials at that time.
Okay, and I assume this is MECP, that Ministry of Environment, that's in charge of this?
That is correct.
Councilor McKelvey?
So back on the charging part of it, we actually, with this program, we have saved money on the residential part compared to what we used to have to pay out. And what our grant was, I believe we kind of netted out a gain.
So through the chair, that is correct. So prior to our transition date, the township paid for the processing and hauling of blue box material. Starting October 1st of last year, we no longer have to pay for the blue box material, and we get money from Circular Materials for our site collecting the blue box material. But we no longer receive provincial funding for the blue box material. That was the difference. But the expenses for the hauling and processing of blue box material was more than the funding that we were receiving. So we no longer have that expense. But we do have we had the site that we use to collect it and our staff time to help monitor that. So that's our investment essentially in offering the site. Otherwise, we do get money back for collecting the material at our sites from Circular Materials.
Councilor McKelvey?
So again, I go back to I personally am not supportive of charging the business people for this. We would have to have a change in our fees and charges bylaw anyways, but this will also impact our township operations. I mean, if you go pick up something, if the township goes and picks up this material at the Inglesby Ball Diamond, they can't even take it to the Inglesby site. They've got to bring it to the Scotch Line site now. So, I mean, our operations are going to be impacted for this too. So back to we really need to lobby the town or the province on this. But as far as charging, I don't think it's fair to charge the business people for this. I don't think we're talking big bucks either.
What would the charges be?
So again, there's a lot of unknowns and some variables. So in my report under financial implications, I did give some estimates on how much it would cost the township. Again, this could fluctuate. If a business is currently using our Blue Box program and then they decide not to, that'll have a big impact. That's tonnages that we will no longer have and have to manage and haul. Or it could work the opposite, where there's businesses that aren't using our Blue Box program for their non-eligible sources, and then they start. And then our prices could go up. So I think it's something that we would have to closely monitor. But it definitely, we would include it in our fees and charges should council decide to go in that direction and implement a reasonable waste disposal fee to manage the material.
Could you give me some idea of what the waste disposal fees would be, and how would you do this, volume or weight, or how?
So through the chair, it would depend on when we get our scales in place. Because right now we charge based on the cubic yard, right? So once we get the scales in place, it'll be different, and we'll be able to do a lot more accurate ways. But I definitely want to do a little bit more research on that, on what's comparable and what other areas are charging before I threw out a number. But that's following council's direction. If council decides that they would like to implement a fee for non-eligibles, staff will bring back a report with further details on what that could look like and what staff's recommendation would be.
Okay. So what exactly are you asking for today?
So through the chair, my recommendations are to award the RFT for the collection, hauling, and processing of blue box materials to Waste Connections for a term of 5 years with the option to extend for an additional 2 one-year periods starting January 1st, 2026. And that council directs staff to provide blue box services to non-eligible sources and charge a reasonable waste disposal fee. And that council directs staff to present proposed waste disposal fees for non-eligible blue box material at a future council meeting for council approval. And that council directs staff that starting January 1st, 2026, non-eligible blue box material will be accepted at the Scotch Line landfill only.
So the proposed waste disposal fees could be zero if we so decide at some point in the future. MCL?
Yeah, Mr. Mayor, in terms of your question, I think today staff need to know that council is supportive of a program related to non-eligibles. To your point, we can leave the recommendation as it stands and the fee could be determined later on. We can also separate out the reference to a fee. But I think today we need to know council's direction. There's a lot of work to do in terms of getting a program in place for January 2026. So, I mean, if the fee is the questionable portion, I think to your point, Mr. Mayor, we can bring back a report and council could decide that they don't want to charge a fee, or we can separate that out from the recommendation today. Thank you.
I mean, as long as the fee can be zero, then it leaves all options on the table, right? So. Councillor McKelvey?
A fee of zero is not a fee. Like, to me, I think the CIO's point is valid. First, we need to decide, are we going to provide the service? I personally want to. I don't think I want to tell the commercial people to go do whatever they need to do, or us, what would we do? The township operations. Secondly, are we agreeing to do the tender that was issued by Dysart? And then the fee can be decided later on and doesn't even need to be addressed in today's.
Red hands waving at me.
So if this helps council, procedural wise, we can amend this resolution and just take out those 2 lines which refer to the actual fees and still proceed with the tender process. And still accept the non-eligible blue box material at Scotch Line and then bring a report back. That's what I sent.
Yep.
So the second part of the recommendation, I'll just defer to the clerk. I think it's taking out the reference to the fee. It's providing the non-eligible program, but taking out the remainder of that line that makes reference to a fee. We're going to provide the program, but take out reference and charging a reasonable fee.
But then we expect to get a report back on whatever recommendation. would be.
Absolutely. Through you, Mr. Mayor, I think to Councillor McKelvey's point, this program would be in place for January 2026. And whether it's next month or as part of the 2026 budget process, I think we would have to put before council how we would fund this program.
Okay. Councillor Saini, you.
Yes, thank you. I like those amendments to the motion. My question would be, in the motion, it doesn't say that after 3 years, if the province changes how they want us to deal with commercial, what is our backup plan? I appreciate that any business, you need to have at least a 5-year plan, and we know government moves really slowly. But what if in 3 years there was a change and the government said that we could put that commercial waste with the residential and handle it all that way? How do we get out of a contract like that? Is there some kind of way to negotiate that within the wording of our contract? Thank you.
So through the chair, that's where I referenced we would have something in the agreement with Waste Connections that gives us an out, that should the province change their regulations and that we no longer have to separate non-eligibles, that we could end our contract like even if it was within 30 days notice or something, but I can work with the director of finance on that wording so that we do have an ability to get out of a 5-year contract should the province change. You're welcome.
Madam Clerk, will you?
Sorry, I just need a couple.
Okay.
Just need a minute. So this would be an amendment, Deputy Marshall and Counselor Sisson. Basically what I've done is I've just changed that third paragraph to read that council directs staff to provide a blue box service to non-eligible sources and report back to council at a future council meeting, and that council directs staff to that starting January 1st, 2026, non-eligible blue box material be accepted at Scotch Line landfill only. I will just stop. Okay, that's fine. Yep, I can remove the report back to council. Okay,
So
I'll
sorry,
read it
read
from,
again,
yeah,
please.
I'll read it. That council directs staff to provide blue box services to non-eligible sources, and that council directs staff that starting January 1st, 2026, non-eligible blue box material be accepted at Scotch Line landfill only. And then I've kept everything else the same at the beginning for the RFT. I haven't made any changes to the first.
Okay, what? Sorry, could you read the whole thing from the top?
Yeah,
please?
sure. That's what I'm asking. Okay, now I can read it from the top. Moved by Deputy Mayor Shell, seconded by Councillor Sisson, that council receive report 25003 waste management blue box program changes to non-eligible sources, follow up for information, and that council directs staff to award the RFT 2025 Public Works 01 collection, hauling, and processing of blue box materials to Waste Connections of Canada for a term of 5 years, with the option to extend for an additional 2 1-year periods starting January 1st, 2026. And that council directs staff to provide blue box services to non-eligible sources, and that council directs staff that starting January 1st, 2026, non-eligible blue box material be accepted at Scotch Line landfill only.
So
Sorry, Vicky, and through the chair, do we want to add in there that council wants to report back on
No.
waste disposal fees?
No.
That's what I was asked to remove.
That will be part of our budget process.
Okay, thank you.
okay, all those in, is this a question? Go ahead.
Just for bureaucratic reasons, can we take the word only off of there? Because if staff decided they wanted to collect these things at another site, then they don't have to come back to council. If something happens, say a flood, we've got some materials from commercial, I don't know. Just maybe that's too much fine tuning, but the word only just kind of traps people.
Through the
Thank you.
chair, to the waste management facilities manager, sorry, would you have an issue with the ECA or anything to make that change, or would that be?
So through the chair, no, that is not an ECA. It's just a site capacity and what we're able to accommodate. So I'm happy to take, I don't think the word only is a big deal either way, so I'm fine to take it out.
Okay. All those in favor? That is carried. Thank you. Visions of blue boxes dancing in my head for quite some time, I believe. Chief. An eventful morning for you already. Welcome back.
Yes, through you, Mr. Chair. Glad I was able to make it back for this. Good morning. I actually, through you, Mr. Mayor, I do not actually have anything to really add to the report, other than we have not yet received the additional funding that was allocated for us, but I would imagine we will be getting that soon. And other than that, I'm happy to take any questions.
Are there any questions? Please read the resolution.
Moved by Counselor Sini, seconded by Counselor Johansson, that council receive report 2509 fire protection grant update as information.
All those in favor? That is carried.
Thank you.
You can go back to fighting the fires. Moving on to finance.
Good morning, Mayor Carter and council. Before you is my report, to send some files to tax sale. We started with 253 files and we're down to 129 in this report. And there's, excuse me, one other one that will come off since this report was published. So we're trying to work with people as much as possible. Just for council's information. This is not a process that we like to do, but we need to make sure the monies are collected. So we have the report in front of you to consider. So historically it changed from 3 years to 2 years in arrears. As of January 1st of the next year. So we reach out to the, each person individually and send a letter individually and allow them a time frame to make a payment arrangement, that's suitable. And then if all else fails, then we come to council for direction. And then in that process, it would take up to a year to fully go through the process to get it to a tender stage. So at any time up until it's registered, they can make partial payments and get them out of that standing. We're always willing to work with the residents to do that. So each stage of the tax sale process within that year would add additional costs throughout the year. So it's not all at once, so.
And if somebody does not pay, then at some point the land reverts to the municipality. Is that what happens, or is it has to go to a tax sale, or how does it work?
Yeah. Everything has to go to the tax sale process.
Okay.
So if the tax sale process fails, whether there's no bids or someone did bid and then didn't complete the sale, then there's a vesting opportunity for the township at that point. Then a report would come back to council with the list of properties, if any, to vest.
Right. Okay, so not a simple process.
No,
Councillor McKelvey.
First of all, thanks for all the effort to get all these collections done that you have, because that will help the bottom line on our ratings from the ministry. But two questions as far as the ones we're going to proceed with. Who are we using? Because this township has always used a solicitor for it, and there's actually other agencies out there that do really good work for tax registrations.
yes, through the chair. So historically, there was a lawyer that the township used, so I'm going to be changing the process to use an agency to provide those services, because that takes a lot of work off the administration staff at the township, and they make sure that all the deadlines are met. They ensure that all the
deeds and everything are good to proceed to a tax sale, because sometimes there is some questions that come along with things. So I've dealt with this company in the past, and they're very good at what they do.
Counselor Sisson?
I think the thing that most upsetting is with all this money that's outstanding, we've already paid our portion to the county and the school board. So we're left holding the bag for all them hundreds, thousands of dollars. And I think that's very unfair to the taxpayer.
Yeah. It's a, doesn't matter when you collect your taxes, the rules are that we as a municipality as of a certain date have to pay the school board and have to pay the county, which you're right, we as a municipality get left holding the bag, and by definition, that's our taxpayers. And you're right, it isn't great, but that's the way the rules are written. Councilor McCollum?
The other thing I want to talk about is the amounts, because when you go through the tax registration process, it's costing money for the agency as you get, you register, then you give notice, blah, 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 it goes on and on and on. If I'm gonna just throw one of these, shows that the taxes are $514.85. We're gonna put $2,500 fee on that right off the bat, because I think that's what's in our fees and charges. Then we're gonna start to incur all these costs. And by the time you get to the tax sale, you realize, oh, this property has no value, it's not gonna sell. So to me, we need to analyze each one of these if they're under a certain amount. Like, I don't want to see us spend $10,000 that we can't get back, because at the end of the process, the property that has $500 worth of tax arrears on it has no value. There's another section in the municipal act where we can write those off as uncollectible. And then at least claim back the county and school board portion. So I can't give a blanket, go ahead and do all of these without having some sort of threshold that's, or analysis completed by staff that say, okay, this really is not a good use of taxpayers' money to proceed with a tax registration on a piece of swampland that you can't get to, and we'll never get our money back. There's a $50.52 file here. Surely we're not going to do a tax registration on that. I think we need to establish a threshold, or we need staff to come back with some further thoughts, but I don't want to process tax registrations on properties that'll never sell.
Madam Treasurer?
So through the chair, like I had said previously, we have to go through the tax sale process to be able to, if it fails, to potentially vest. The way it works at the end of, if it ends up being vested, then there is the write-off portion to the county and the school boards to recover some of those fees, to recover some of those fees at the time of vesting. So as long as the township wants to vest those properties and the write-offs happen, and there's a timeline that the township would have to keep that vesting whole to allow those write-offs. So if you turned around and wanted to sell that property and surplus that property, then you would have to reimburse the county and the school boards those fees. So yes, there are some that might be landlocked. There might be some that could potentially become an easement or those such things. But it is the process that has to happen. It is unfortunate, and sometimes when there's other extenuating circumstances, it could be that there's an estate or something that there's no heirs to the estate, those type of things. So it is to get it cleaned up, because if you don't, then it will historically stay there forever. Even if you do the write-off, it'll end up in that same situation 2 years from now.
Councillor McKelvey?
So I agree that sometimes it's a necessary evil to clean it up, so to speak, but not at such great expense. So I'm trying to look it up on the fly here and I probably won't be able to find it, but there's a section in the act where if there's property that's deemed, trying to think of the wording and sorry, I'm on the fly. So the treasurer can recommend to the council to write off the taxes because they're deemed uncollectible. That's a lot better way of dealing with those properties. I realize it's an annual thing and it happens every year and blah, blah, blah. But I'm not spending $10,000 to collect a third of 500 back from the county and a third of the 500 back from the school board. That's just not a good.
Councillor Sini?
Yeah, I see that too, when I look at some of the outstanding. I mean, it goes up to 60,000. That's certainly one that we want to go for and it's worth our while. But then I look at some of the other ones that are not even $1,000, and I think far less even, that those are the ones that we'd want to. So if we have what's has been called a threshold and say, let's start with these and get going on them, what would be that threshold number that would make it reasonable to follow through on some of these? Thank you.
So through the chair, I can look at some of those smaller ones and review that before hitting the button to send them. So I can do that review. It's just I haven't had a wholesome knowledge of some of these properties, so I can probably deal with the planning department as well on some of these properties before sending.
You do have something? And yeah,
I'm mulling something over.
well,
Through you, Mr. Mayor, and I'll let the treasurer make comment, but I think council has raised some good points today. And perhaps a deferral of the report, and we can bring it back at the next meeting with some recommendations on how we might, I think the word threshold has been used, or some of the smaller files, how we might do two different processes, one a tax sale and maybe one a recommendation to council for write-off.
yeah, I think that would be wise. I've seen some of these tax sales and it's, you had a situation where a road was put in and there was a little corner piece that was left and, then it's, it's absolutely useless to anybody who's never going to sell it. But at the same time, I assume if you leave it there registered, then every year you're going to get another $6 worth of taxes added to it or something like that. So I think it'd be worthwhile to defer this and to bring it back with as has been said, some sort of a threshold or in some cases, some of the small numbers may be because there was a partial payment or something like that on a large piece of land. So let's bring it back and have a better way to attack this.
Yep, for sure.
Councilor McKelvey?
Is there any way of throwing a threshold out here right now? I mean, I'm supportive that we need to try and get some of these collected. And tax registration is going to be the necessary evil to get people's attention. So like, do we want to say that she can at least go ahead with anything that's 5,000 or more at this point and report back on others?
Let's bring the whole thing back, and because the treasurer is in a better position of knowing what the total costs would be on this. And so I don't want to just come up with an arbitrary number now without knowing a lot of the background. So
to Councilor McKelvey's point, though, would that save the treasurer a bunch of work if we did give a bit of a threshold? Or just maybe hear from her thoughts?
So-
I don't know.
it comes down to what's the number?
Well, Councilor McKelvey
That-
just said 5,000, so
Yeah.
just a I don't know,
Yeah.
I don't know any, my treasury experience, so I'm just asking.
Yeah,
Just to save some time possibly.
yeah, through the chair, I think that would be a good number to start, and then anything, if council was in agreement, then we could move some of those files ahead and start trying to collect those taxes. And then, bring back a report with anything under, and then you have a more finer, discussion.
Okay, Councilor McKelvey.
I like that idea. It also helps staff by spreading this out. This is a big undertaking, so a necessary one, and I applaud you for bringing it up, but I want to get some of this going.
Okay, so I just, happy to amend the motion. I will need, Counselor Sisson and Counselor McKelvey, to approve. So the amendment would be in the second line that council approves the attached listing of arrears of $5,000 or more to proceed to tax sale. And then the rest of, the preamble would be the same. And I can also add in a line if council wishes that council directs staff to report back, with a threshold for the smaller, amounts for council's consideration. Thoughts? This is
Okay.
council's motion, so I need some direction
Yep.
on how you wish it to be crafted.
Councilor Sam.
I'm not a finance person, but 5,000 came to my mind as a threshold when I was looking through this list, knowing what it's going to cost us to do this. And so I think if we give a clear number, that would hopefully help the treasurer with that, right? To get started and just get those files moving. There might be an odd bird in there, but at least it's a number to start getting this off our list. Thanks.
Councilor McKelvey.
Okay, so if we do it, that the council approves those on the attached list to proceed to tax registration with no tax sale at this point yet. For any threshold of $5,000 or more. And then she's going to come back after she's had time to analyze some of these evidence. And like it can't be tax sale, it's got to be tax registration. We're not at the tax sale stage yet. It's tax registration legislated.
Yep, go ahead.
So moved by Counselor Sisson, seconded by Counselor McKelvey, that council receives report 2512 finance tax sale as information, and that council approves the attached listing of arrears of $5,000 dollars or more to proceed to tax registration, and that all costs associated with the tax sale proceedings be added to the tax rolls and be collected as taxes. And further that if any payment commitment is not adhered to the property would automatically proceed to tax sale process.
All those in favor? That is carried. Thank you. Ms. Bull, I believe you're next.
I am, sorry.
Go
The
ahead.
Chair to Council. The first report before Council today is regarding the Highlands Water Trail. So this is a straightforward report that staff put forward, I would say in most cases annually, as the fees or rates are proposed for change through Algonquin Highlands. And this is for the Halliburton Highlands Water Trails program, also known as the Poker Lakes, within the Poker Lakes area. So the Halliburton Highlands Water Trails program for the Poker Lakes area is located within the geographical area or parts of it of Minden, which is within our geographical area of Minden Hills. And it's also along Highway 118 west of Carnarvon. The program is administered and operated by the Township of Algonquin Highlands on behalf of Minden Hills for those areas. So Algonquin Highlands reviewed and amended some of the program fees and rates for the provision of camping, which is in our schedule of rates. The changes are noted in yellow and they do reflect a 3% increase. The current bylaw that exists for Minden Hills today is 1502, and it actually provides rates and set fines for a Schedule Part 1 of Provincial Offences Act, which allows staff to regulate and enforce the operations of the municipal campgrounds. So happy to address any questions council may have.
Are there any questions? Councilor McKelvey?
Just a procedural one. Do we need to advertise this because it's now going to be part of our fees and charges?
Algonquin Highlands has already actually approved the fees and charges, and I've struggled with that in the past as well. For the most part, we're kind of just endorsing it, and
Yes, we are.
we are.
I just
it-
didn't know if you had to advertise it.
Yeah.
Any other questions? You read the resolution.
Yep. Moved by Deputy Mayor Shell, seconded by Councillor McKelvey, that report 2510 administration, Halliburton Highlands Water Trails proposed fees and rates be received as information. And further that council adopts bylaw 2538, being a bylaw to amend Schedule B of 1502, a bylaw for the establishment and regulation of camping permits and their rates and fees to be collected through the Halliburton Highlands Water Trails program.
All those in favor? That is carried. Moving on to website.
Okay, so this sort of comes to a slight surprise. Our township website is currently on the iCreate server platform. The township works with GHD Digital to maintain the site. GHD is actually decommissioning the iCreate server and requires the township to migrate to GovStack by June of 2026. The Minden Hills transition period would commence, if the approval goes through today, around July 2025. We're actually eager to get going in order to have this actually completed before we enter into an election year. The County of Halliburton, Township of Minden Hills, Dysart et al., Municipality of Highlands East, we've all participated in a shared services quote for the migration and pricing, so we're not alone. I know in the report, I give more of a detailed review of how those notifications sort of came through the municipality and how we were notified. However, there is a stipulation when we talk about entering into the shared services quote. All parties have to participate to benefit from that shared services quote. Staff did reach out in August of 2024. We were trying to prepare and get things dealt with in a timely manner so we could actually get some of those fees implemented in the 2025 budget. However, there was no real true end of life date and everything seemed to be up in the air. We were assured that business would carry on as usual. And we felt that we were probably good till 2027. But closer to the new year, we actually found that our end of life date was 2026. So staff are putting this forward and recommending to proceed with the project. The cost is $11,281.60, which is actually around 50% less than the initial quote that we did receive in 2024. We are requesting and seeking approval for the project to be funded through administration reserves. And happy to address any questions council may have.
So this is, we are going ahead with the county
Correct.
and everybody else as
If,
was discussed yesterday at county council.
correct, through the chair, and that's if council approves today.
Yeah.
That's, and the other two municipalities, they're already good to go. It's just the county and and our municipality that need to see council approval.
I think we approved the county yesterday for the county portion.
I don't have a question, just a comment that this is a prime example of what group tendering can do.
Absolutely, absolutely. And through the chair as well, we, could we get another battery for Deputy Marshall? Thank you. And through the chair, sorry, moving forward, the clerk's department is planning to request and seek approval of budget funds to be added to reserves on an annual basis, so that when we do sort of get past that 4-year span, we already have an accumulated amount to move forward. So it's not such a hard hit
Okay.
on our
Any-
budget process.
Any other questions? Please read the resolution.
Moved by Counselor Saney, seconded by Counselor Johansson, that council receives report 2511 Township Website Migration as Information, and that council directs staff to proceed with the GHD GovStack proposal in the amount of $11,281.60. And further, that council directs the associated costs be paid from the administration reserves.
All those in favor? That is carried. Voting.
So the next report is regarding the voting methods for the 2026 election. I just want to say that I realize this report is very extensive. It does have a lot of information in it. It provides sort of brief summaries of voting methods and those associated costs. I'll try to keep it as light as possible. And provide a little bit of background information, but basically I'll cover what staff is recommending, some of those supported facts, and then I'll circle with any questions if council wants to get into some of those other methods of voting. So the municipal school board election will take place on Monday, October 26, 2026. I realize this seems to some people that it's far off in the future. However, the clerk's department, we continually work on elections even after one ends. We do have quite a few regulatory requirements to carry through duties into progressive years. However, we really hit the ground running a year in advance, a year and a half in advance of an election. We've already started meeting with the neighboring clerks to sort of work through some of the items that we carry forward as duties. And this absolutely works wonderfully. We collaborate on a lot of items, right down to, advertising and shared costs and the RFP and so on and so forth. The other 3 Haliburton County membered municipalities are proceeding with internet and telephone voting methods. Staff are recommending to proceed with the methods of internet and telephone voting in order to align with the other 3 municipalities. This will reduce cost, provide consistent shared advertising, will lessen public confusion, and increase voter participation and reduce the township's carbon footprint. I do not take this lightly. I know this is a big change for the municipality. One of the many duties that the clerk or returning officer is expected to adhere to is ensuring that the voting process is accessible. And so one of the key advantages to the internet and telephone voting method is it addresses the provincial accessibility regulations. The voters are able to vote from anywhere at any time from the comfort of their own home and using their own devices that they are familiar with, along with any tools that they need in order to process the casting of their ballot. customer service is a very high priority. And I do understand that in-person voting is very, very important to our community. So for the electors that like to vote in person, staff will plan to arrange for voting equipment and a location made available at an accessible location, of course, at a township office or the municipal facility during the voting period. And this will also include election day. The voting place and equipment will have similar setup as that in-person paper ballot, where the voter will actually go behind the screen. The difference would be instead of marking an X on the paper ballot, they're going to actually click a box or a button to cast their ballot. By providing the voting equipment at the township office or voting locations, I think it will really help and accommodate the users that may have some of those technology or connectivity issues. And staff will be trained and available on site to help with that. As far as the budget, approximately we will have 72,000 by 2026 to operate the election. However, if we do just go with the internet and telephone method, I think the approximate cost will be about $60,000. So it will lessen the cost to the ratepayers. Staff are seeking approval of the voting method today. As I said, it's really to permit adequate time to issue the joint RFP with the other municipalities. We want to build awareness with the public on the voting methods, and we'll start, fairly soon, introducing the electoral portal to encourage the public to get on and make sure that their information is accurate. It will also allow the County of Halliburton IT team to prepare because they have their staff that they put in order, and they provide amazing assistance to our municipal clerks during an election. So that's a very important process for the clerks. So this concludes my report, and I'm happy to answer any questions council may have, and I can sort of discuss the other methods if council wishes.
Deputy Mayor Shell.
Thank you for that, Vicky. Not really a question so much as council did receive one email this morning regarding someone who believes we should just have paper ballots, but that works in federal elections because you can vote where you live. And we have to remember that a large majority of our population is seasonal. I like the idea of the internet and telephone, especially the internet for engaging younger people. Yeah, great report. I support what you're putting forward and look forward to seeing what the numbers will be if we go this route, as opposed to what it's been in the past.
Thank you.
Councilor Johansson.
Thank you. I'm concerned over the low Minden Hills municipal voter turnout. I'm under the impression that others feel the same way. Options are important. We need to make it easy for our voters. The more options the townships offer the voters, hopefully, the more that will be involved. We all know the numbers are down. Democracy is often said to mean rule by the people. An example of this is any system of government in which people vote their elected representatives into a seat. We need to keep the options at hand. We have a high number of older generation that don't necessarily appreciate change. We as a township need to accommodate them all and provide accessibility. After all, the seniors are the largest pool of voters. They are trustworthy of the current ballot system. The in-person and mail paper ballots are a great option. I also know that online voting is growing, but all options should be available. Many of us are not comfortable with some of these options. I believe something that is so important should be asked of the community. What do they want? Put out a survey, engage the community. We need to make a decision that will be beneficial to all. Thank you.
Councilor McKelvey.
So as you know, I asked for the breakdown of what the method of voting was in the last election. Our voter turnout was down, but there was no mayor or deputy mayor, and that makes a huge difference in trying to get your voter turnout. So, but of our voter turnout, 690 people voted by paper ballot, which is 23%. I cannot support changing from what we did last time. Internet and telephone makes it very easy for people
outside of the area to vote, but the traditional paper ballot should continue to be provided. And I don't know that I was trying to read your report and understand how much more that was going to cost. I don't know that you would need tabulators for 690 votes. But
Sure, go ahead.
So through the chair, staff is requesting that we do use tabulators. We do find that the manual count is very taxing. We do struggle a little bit getting volunteers to assist with that process. The tabulators would cut down on the amount of staffing that we would need in order to coordinate that. With respect to the comment about the percentage, the overall eligible electors, it would be approximately around 5%, not necessarily the higher percentage. I do understand where you're getting your numbers from, absolutely, because we do have that large amount that did not vote in the past election, Councillor McKelvey, and I don't disagree. I think staff really does have a challenge in front of them to advertise. I think we need to advertise. We need to get those numbers up and have more participation in the election. But I do strongly feel that we can still do that with the internet and telephone method. I will work very hard to work with our community, and we will be setting up the location no differently than we would with the paper ballot. And we will work with the community and assist them to check that box electronically. It would, as I've said earlier, literally instead of checking a box on a piece of paper, you're clicking a button, and we are happy to provide assistance for that. And I will advertise thoroughly to the community so that there is more of a comfort level for that. As far as the demographics, when we look at the population within our area, we do have a large senior population. However, our numbers show, because I do look at these things, and this is part of the campaigning and advertising that staff are going to work towards to get out to the public, is that our demographics really sit between the age of 45 and 66. We actually had quite a few seniors past that age range that did vote internet and telephone. So I do understand, I totally understand the want for the public to come in person. I agree. I think it's a night out for them. It's actually coming out and feeling like they're casting their ballot. But I really do think that we can move forward with the electronic and telephone means. It really does cut down on a lot of the barriers. It cuts down on a lot of human errors that do occur with the manual methods.
So I just want to make sure we're framing this properly. Okay, so we have the internet and the telephone voting that is available over a period of time. Okay, I think that what we are talking about is in-person voting, which takes place, I think traditionally we've had in-person voting ahead of time on the Thanksgiving Day weekend and then on election day. And so what you're suggesting is that we would still have the in-person voting, but instead of somebody putting an X on a piece of paper, they would push a button but they would still be showing up on election day and voting. And so it's pushing a button as opposed to making an X on a piece of paper. Is that
Through the
correct?
chair, that is correct. We would be doing, it would be no different. We are still going to set up those locations and still provide that service. We do have quite a few, as you've said, seasonal residents that are unable to get in. And so Thanksgiving weekend is technically the date that on the Saturday that we do offer that advanced vote. I mean, internet and telephone, you have that voting period duration regardless, but we will still provide that in-person service to assist and help. we also, we'll be discussing and as we develop the procedures, but we also provide at the municipal office throughout the regular business hours and on Saturdays during the election set times where the public can come in. We do understand that there are members of the public that can't sort of get in during those regular business hours. And so we will make sure that we accommodate for that. I'm also considering actually staying open 1 or 2 nights after hours during the week, just to help some residents that work late and also work on a Saturday. So,
Okay, so just make it, totally clear is that, many places, many communities are not having any in-person voting. Okay, they're just doing the phone and the internet. What we are suggesting is we would have phone and internet and in-person voting at prescribed times.
that is correct, Mr. Mayor.
Sorry, I think Councillor Saini was first.
Yes, thank you. And thank you for the comments that were made as well from Councillor Johannesson. I should have raised this earlier, but we've been in a state of emergency, so I didn't get a chance to bring this to council and I neglected to include it in my list of things in my report. But on May 28th, here in Minden, AMO is bringing us some highlights from the Healthy Democracy Project, which is to encourage people running. It's to encourage people to vote. It's encouraging people to get engaged with our community. I think this is going to be a very important activity. I also want to say that part of putting this together is making sure it doesn't rely and pull on any of our staff resources. So we have a group Aging Together as Community who are, we think of aging together, we think of maybe people with the color of my hair, but actually you got to realize that even 19-year-olds are aging in our community, right? So this is going to be a promotion work that they are doing, and they have connections with the high school as well. But they are doing a lot of the work in getting this promoted. It's going to be on May 28th, so please put it in your calendars. And we're going to look at issues around representation, around getting people out to vote, and basically participating in the healthy democracies. So that's happening. And also I wanted to highlight on June 11th, I believe in Tweed, a location I can find, if people are interested in the whole one-day workshop on healthy democracies. AMO's putting a whole day project together, and I think there, last I heard, were I think 11 spaces left if people are interested in attending that. So just a couple things to highlight. There is a lot of work going on to make sure people stay engaged and vote and participate in the process. So thank you for that.
Okay, Councillor Sisson.
I just wanted to say I agree with Councillor Hanson. Myself included with this, what happens if I push the wrong button by mistake? Then where do we go? If somebody's going to get a vote that,
No,
so that's my concern with the senior population.
through the chair to Councillor Sisson, actually there is, when you walk through the method, you actually confirm. So you select your candidates and then there's a screen that pops up and it says, this is the candidate you have chosen, and then you confirm it. So it's just not a click of a button, you're all done. There's confirmations, and that works for the telephone as well. They back check each time you make a selection, and then your ballot is cast. So
Okay,
did I
Councillor
answer?
McKelvey.
So, to indicate that we're going to do 3 methods by doing telephone, internet, and in person is still by electronic means. So it's really not what a lot of the people in this community want. They want a paper ballot. I 100% agree. It's more work for you. I get that. But I feel very strongly that if 23% of the people voted by traditional ballots, we can't ignore that. The other issue in the last election was that people were given replacement kits and something happened. I don't know what it was, but they couldn't utilize them. You had to send out more replacement kits. So I know it all happened during the the hunt. All the hunters were leaving to go to the hunting camps, and they had tried to vote and couldn't. So we also had another lady that sent information about this. So I really strongly am opposed to this being dropped, and that's what we're being asked to deal with today. So
So just clarify, you can't use that number in the way you did. I mean, the 690 or whatever the number was, those were in-person votes.
exactly.
I mean, but you can't just say that those people are demanding paper. You can still in person go and push a
No.
button.
Of the 690 people that that were on that last list, they came in and got a paper ballot.
Yeah, I know,
The
but
community
they
center.
wanted to vote in person.
Yes.
And
Well,
so
they
they
don't
voted-
want to vote on a computer. I can assure you, most of these people want to do the
I don't
tradition.
think you can assume that. So, yeah, Hennessy.
I just like to add, as you know, I'm very engaged with the community and where I work and whatnot. I would say about 20 people that I've talked to in the last few days, only 2 were, didn't care and how they voted. And those were the younger ones, which would prefer to use a phone. The older generation, I'm telling you, they're not happy about this,
Not happy about what?
not having the paper ballots.
Are they, again,
I know what you're suggesting, or what you've put in your report. But they want to come in, they want to have the paper ballot. You might find it silly, but they want to engage with the other residents, like you've said. I've talked to the community, only a few people, but, I don't know, it's not good, I don't think, but.
So if I may, through the chair, I just want to sort of speak to when we talk about seniors and using electronic devices and them not being comfortable. I do know it has been successful. Dysart et al., their clerk, returning officer, did use the method in the last election. I will be doing no different if it's approved. We will still be going to the multi-residential facilities to assist with that. I know Highland Crest is one of the ones that we do already, even with the paper ballot, but we would still be doing that. And the municipal clerk did have success in the previous election with the electronic device and going to those multi-residential agencies. So I think it is manageable. I think it is something that we can progress towards.
Councillor Saint?
Yes, thank you. I think there's pros and cons, and I've seen the pros and cons in all of these methods of ballot. The paper ballot, I remember this council being filled with people waiting for the responses to come over for where we voted on paper. And the numbers just didn't add up, and the whole room started saying Florida, Florida, based on some history in Florida, which happened in an election. So, I mean, and then the next round came back and there was a mistake in the paper ballot counting. So it does happen there. I can also say there can be mistakes with the electronic voting. I remember people, because candidates get a list of making sure they don't continue to ask people to vote who've already voted 3 weeks ago or something, right? So people who thought they voted didn't, who voted electronically because they didn't realize they had to go and push confirm. So there are all of these errors that can happen with whatever. So it's really important that we pay attention and really educate the public, no matter which method that we use. I think there's, I like that. I don't think we can do this, but I really like the way that you have a paper ballot and then you put it in and it's automatically counted. You put it between 2 pieces of paper, you put it through the machine. They're probably very expensive, but it counts it mechanically. I don't know if that's an option, but I do think that, we'll try to do our best in educating the public, but there are errors that happen no matter how we try to do this. We just need to make sure that it's the best we can do. Thank you.
Yeah, look, from my perspective, I just want to ensure that we, unlike other communities, have in-person voting on election day. You know, whether, however that works is not important to me. Okay, you know, I think that the electronic one can work well as long as you have somebody there to instruct people and so on. But the hill I want to die on is the fact that we have in person on election day, that you can go between 6 or 8 in the morning or 8 in the afternoon, whatever that is, and have that. But in terms of the paper, I recognize it's more expensive. I don't really have a position on that one. Councilor McKelvey?
So the people that want to go vote with paper don't have the confidence or the ability to vote electronically. So you're saying that they will still be able to vote on election day in person by going up to the arena or wherever this is going to be and vote, but it's on a computer and they may need help, and then they feel this is not my ability to vote in privacy. So I don't think that having computers available is actually providing people the opportunity to vote in person, like you're saying.
Sorry, through the chair, to Councillor McKelvey. We have actually assisted people that are uncomfortable voting electronically. They've actually come in and used our kiosks in past elections. And we do have methods where their vote is still private. We show them, we help them. You know, there's ways around protecting their secrecy so we don't even know how they've cast their ballot. There is ways to assist with that.
I guess the question is, all right, if we decide to go with paper, what is it going to cost?
So if we do proceed with the 3 methods, which includes paper, we are requesting that tabulators are used.
Fine.
So that would be an additional $35,000 in order to facilitate that, because we do need a backup tabulator for that. So we are looking at an increase in the current budget, probably around $3,000 to $5,000.
So $3,000 to $5,000 more.
Correct.
Okay. Councilor McKelvey?
Did we use tabulators last time?
Through the chair, and is that okay?
Yeah.
Through the chair. No, we did not. And we did struggle through the election to make sure that we had the DROs and the poll clerks in place. We had last minute cancellations. People ended up with COVID and sick and the flu, and it was quite a quite a scramble at the last minute.
Okay, look, I don't like to spend taxpayers' dollars, but the $3,000 to $5,000, if there's a better sense of assurance in the community with that, I mean, I think it's an investment that's worthwhile. I don't know.
And to clarify through the chair, that additional, when I said it's only an additional $3,000 to
Yeah.
$5,000, I mean, in addition to the budget that council approved this
Yeah,
year.
Sure.
So basically they approved for the 3 methods, the 72,000.
Add 3,000 to 5,000 to that, so you're adding,
Yeah.
you know, you're adding 4 or 5%. So,
Yeah.
I mean, if that would give better reassurance to everybody, you know, and that really reflects our community, then I would be willing to go with that. I don't know how everybody else feels. Councilor Hennessy?
I would like to, in the future, maybe if you can just give us a report on Dizer. You mentioned that they used the computer or whatever, to see what their numbers are, like if they've already used it or no.
So Dyers are actually presented to council, and I can forward you the
Okay.
link.
Yeah, just interested. You know, I know the. Yeah. Yes.
Oh, sorry.
Yes.
Sorry, can I just have a minute?
Here we have a shadow.
Must be the light. Oh, there he is. Yeah.
Welcome, Counselor Ingram.
I, I know the world is changing very fast and I appreciate everybody's comments here, but I just, at this time, I like to, what I've stated here and, I say note to, like to keep the paper balance. Sorry.
Counselor Ingram, are you waving hi or do you have a comment?
I have a comment.
Go ahead.
I agree with the mayor and I think we should accommodate all the members of the public. And whether it be 600 or 1,600, I still think we need to offer that to them. The three methods. Thank you.
Counselor McKelvey.
I just want to mention that I'm still not convinced we need tabulators for the counting. That's just my personal feeling. The advance vote for the federal election just happened at the one that I happened to have been at was at 700 mark. They did not use tabulators. Provincial one did, but I'm just giving you that tidbit of information. So I don't think that when we're looking at costs at all, that we should even be considering tabulators.
MCAO, do you have a comment?
I do. I think for our clerks team, they have outlined the additional work, the additional number of people that would be required. I've done 4 elections in my time frame. I would not do a paper ballot election without tabulators. I think that gives people much better confidence in the count. So it would be a strong recommendation, council, that if paper ballots are a want, that's fair. But we have tabulators to count the ballots. Thank you.
So, do you need a motion here or what are you looking for? I mean, I think you have pretty strong direction here. I think it's pretty much unanimous that we have a paper ballot.
Mhm.
So fine. So do you need time to rewrite the resolution?
I would need a couple of minutes.
That's fine. We're gonna take a break anyway. So, Counselor Saini?
And because I've seen miscounts by people counting them by hand before, and it puts more stress on people overall, I think the tabulators are a better way to go than the hand voting account. It's much more accurate and clear.
Okay,
Thank you.
so we will give the clerk time to rewrite the motion. We'll take a break until 11:10, and then that I think is the last item on the agenda before we go to close. So we'll just finish with that motion and then go into close. Thank you. we're live. Welcome back, everybody. We left with our clerk furiously scribbling out a new resolution. So we could go ahead with the resolution.
So I thank you. No, yeah. So sorry, the amendment was to include traditional paper ballot voting. And then we also included the cost of the tabulators to be incorporated in the next budget rounds. So the amendment approval is Councillor McKelvey and Deputy Marshall. Yes. Okay. So moved by Councillor McKelvey, seconded by Deputy Marshall, that council receives report 2512 administration 2026 election voting method as information, and that council directs staff to proceed with the methods of internet, telephone, and traditional paper ballot for voting in the 2026 municipal election. And further, that council directs staff to include the cost of tabulators in the 2026 budget, and that council directs staff to proceed with the issuance of a joint RFP with the local municipalities, utilizing internet and telephone voting for the 2026 election. And further, that a bylaw be brought forward to a future meeting of council authorizing alternative voting method in accordance to section 242 1B of the Municipal Act as amended.
All those in favor? That is carried. Thank you. We need a resolution to go into closed session, please.
Moved by Councillor E. Hennessy, seconded by Councillor Saney. Be it resolved that council proceed into closed session at 11:12 a.m. for the purpose of discussing the following: 2 items pursuant to section 239(2)B of the Municipal Act 2001 as amended regarding personal matters about an identifiable individual, including municipal or local board employees, review of nominees for an award, and review of applicants for a committee. And 1 item pursuant to section 239(2)K of the Municipal Act 2001 as amended regarding position, plan, procedure, criteria, or instruction to be applied to any negotiations carried on or to be carried on by or on behalf of the municipality or local board. Proposal review negotiations.
All those in favor? That is carried. All right, we'll move into close as soon as we can.
I have to. And I was actually have to ask. Oh, yeah, sorry. Actually, the yard is down.
Okay. Just let me know when. So we will have to use the microphones, correct?
Hey, Lisa Fitton. Thanks for helping me out today.
All right, welcome back. Madam Clerk, please read the motion for getting us back into open.
Moved by Counselor Sisson, seconded by Counselor McKelvey. Be it resolved that closed session adjourn at 12:10 PM and open session resume.
All those in favor? That's carried.
Moved by Counselor Johansson, seconded by Counselor Sisson. Be it resolved that the direction given in closed session be approved.
All those in favor? That is carried.
Keep going.
Yeah, sure.
Moved by Deputy Mayor Shell, seconded by Counselor McKelvey. Be it resolved that bylaw 2538, amending bylaw for HHWTP be received, read a first time, considered, read a second and third time, and finally passed with the corporate seal fixed.
All those in favor? It's carried. Confirming.
Moved by Counselor Sisson, seconded by Deputy Mayor Shell, that bylaw 2542, being a bylaw to confirm the proceedings of council held during its meeting of April 24th, 2025, be received, read a first time, considered, read a second and third time, and finally passed with the corporate seal affixed.
All those in favor? That is carried. Adjournment.
Moved by Counselor Sisson, seconded by Counselor Johansson. Be it resolved that the April 24th, 2025 regular council meeting is hereby adjourned at 12:11 PM.
All those in favor? That is carried. Thank you. Our next regular council meeting is scheduled for Thursday, May 8th. Hopefully it will be drier then. Everybody stay safe.